Thank you so much, dear chairs, colleagues, friends. We are not just witnessing a changing world. I believe we are standing on the edge of a new global frontline. The Russian aggression in Ukraine was not just a breach of international law, but rather a blow to the foundation of the rules-based order, one built on consensus, on legality, on predictability. And that architecture is crumbling. The balance that defined the post-Cold War era is giving way to a new confrontation, one shaped by the rivalry between the United States and China. And you might not agree, but I think most of what is happening in between, chaos, realignments, appeasements, are either smokescreens or early tremors before a larger political, economic, or possibly military clash. And I think that the front line of this new collision will not run only through Donetsk or South China Sea, but also through the faulty political lines of Western Balkans. A region which is witnessing a surge of Russian and Chinese influence. Russia brings disinformation and memory politics, China infrastructure and silence of democracy. But we should not ignore a very insidious threat internally. And these are the rising illiberal tendencies in European Union and in our region. Illiberal tendencies where rule of law is traded for populism, or free media or independent judiciary are under siege. One thing is true, though our region is not the authors of this disruption, we are always its first victim. Too close to be ignored, too far to be prioritized, too fragile to be left unattended. But our region is becoming again a zone of competition instead of a space of integration. And this is dangerous for Europe and for us in the Western Balkans. And as someone said, we need to act immediately because we don't need another Dayton. We need another Copenhagen for the region. We need crisis resolution, prevention, not crisis resolution. We need integration, not containment, because Europe must complete itself in order to protect itself. And let me be clear, Western Balkans will not stay neutral in this new Cold War. If Europe delays, the others will not. China doesn't want to win Russia doesn't want to win the Balkans. It only wants to keep it unstable. China doesn't seek alignment. It seeks leverage. Therefore, Europe must stop treating enlargement as a charity, but as a strategic necessity. Western Balkans will not weaken the European Union. We will complete it. But Europe must act as a geopolitical actor. And in geopolitics, you don't have time to wait for consensus. You need to be courageous, you need to be clear, and you need speed. What we need as a region is credibility in keeping the promises, predictability in laying out clear steps ahead, and protection from those who exploit delays in order to destabilize. And this brings me to the case of North Macedonia. For us, EU enlargement is not a policy choice. It is an existential necessity. The EU has been the most powerful, cohesive force in a diverse state, multilingual, multicultural, multi-ethnic. And to take that away is not only to delay the process, is to unravel the very fabric of a state that hoped that it could be different, but still united. Because when EU perspective retreats, then the division advances. Ethnic one, institutional one, political and social division. But is there a hope? I believe we are at a rare moment. The bled pledge of the previous European Council of integration of Western Balkans in 2030 and the new European Commission call to integrate Western Balkans in 2029 somehow create a unique alignment, at least with our domestic cycle. But only if, and this is more for my domestic audience, if North Macedonia holds early elections this year. Because then we will open our first 4-year reform window in the last 2 decades. No campaigning, no destruction, just governance and just delivery. Because, just to remind you, in the past 20 years, we've had 14 election processes. That's one every 17 months. In between, paralysis, gridlock, and delays. So 2025-29 could be our breakthrough for constitutional reform, for chapter progress, for institutional consolidation. And this is not just a window of opportunity. It may be our last window of convergence. But let me mention a few obstacles on this way, both internal ones and external ones. Internal, in North Macedonia, we face a political oligarchic axis, one that doesn't want to finish EU accession, but to trap it in a permanent loop. An axis that is dismantling the very essence of the Ohrid peace agreement that has been underpinning the inter-ethnic harmony and cohesion. And as these axes grow, people react, but not with protest, but with passports. Citizens becoming EU citizens via neighbors, not as a dream, but as an escape. And we are approaching a contradiction. A country outside the EU, governed by forces pulling it backwards, populated by EU citizens who long ago moved forward. This is not just a demographic crisis. This is strategic absurdity. On external obstacles, our relation with Bulgaria is sensitive and is asymmetrical. They are inside, we are outside. They hold the veto, we hold the burden of proof. But here, the negotiating framework is our shield. It ensures that the process is guided by clear benchmarks, not political pressure. And let me be clear, the only formal obligations related to Bulgaria are two: the inclusion of Bulgarian minority in the preamble of our constitution, and two, the adoption of an action plan on minority rights. The bilateral protocols on history are expressions of goodwill, not instruments of leverage. They belong in academic dialogue, not political vetoes. And yes, by the end of the process, both sides should aim for common ground, but that must be achieved through constructive ambiguity and not historical impositions. I want just to add out of my script the debate that Deputy Prime Minister Tanja Fajon discussed over the integration before membership approach. Just to remind you that the very idea was launched initially from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of North Macedonia via non-paper that was delivered to President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, at Globsec, after it was consulted with colleagues, foreign ministers and ministries of the region. And the idea was not to replace the final goal of integration. That remains the same. But to replace the trajectory to the final goal. So as countries fulfill certain criteria, they become eligible to use the privileges and obligations of that sector, of single market, of formal bodies, or structure and cohesive funds. Or the second approach was to detach the veto right from the full membership package and to allow it in a complementary process to be acquired additionally after membership, just as the Schengen or the Eurozone. This is a discussion that has been launched several years ago, and I'm glad that we can discuss it and elaborate it here today. Thank you so much for your attention.